Welcome viewers to the series Exploring Careers in Data Analytics. My name is Lila Kozowski, class of 2024 at Middlebury College, and I would like to introduce this episode's guest speaker. I am joined today by Trisha Singh, class of 2018, research data scientist at Meta. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Trisha.
Thanks, Lila. Happy to be here.
Trisha, this series explores a number of different professional roles involving data analytics. Tell us a little bit about the work you do as a MetaMate and the infrastructure that you are working with.
So my work typically involves a lot of different steps that come up during the data science process. So getting the data cleaned and then trying out a lot of different models to solve a problem that I need to answer, and then experimenting a little bit with what can best answer the question, and then communicating my results to the people who are going to make decisions. And in terms of area, I work on the infrastructure of Meta. So that means anything from physical to cloud. So if they want to build more data centers and there are questions about it, that where should the new data center be or something like that. Or there are models that Meta creates and trains, and then they're used by our company. So we maintain the infrastructure for that and kind of control how people use it and make it easier for them.
What specifically, if you want to go into a little bit more detail on some of the different elements of infrastructure that you work with and how that work you do relates to maybe different elements such as the hardware and the software and the data centers and stuff.
So I work in the hardware space. So what that means is that Meta manufactures its own hardware, and they're always looking to innovate and make it better, increase the performance. So this creates questions about okay, so how should we design the next generation of hardware? So one of the things that I help with is to understand the trade-offs between different types of hardware using data science, and technically that involves more of like math optimization. To understand that, okay, what would perform best and what would be the cheapest cost. So those kind of questions in the hardware space. But then there's also another field where it's very hard to correctly quantify the performance of hardware, especially when it's a new kind of hardware. So we also work on understanding that, okay, how would you quantify that this hardware is X times better than that hardware. So that involves kind of understanding what kind of things are run on that device, and how do we say one is better than the other. I think on the infrastructure side, that's some of the main questions that I help to answer. Yeah. And then in the future, as Meta works more on the AR/VR space and it starts to develop the Oculus device even more, a lot of questions come up around that too, that, okay, that's essentially a hardware problem too, majorly. So just those kind of efforts as well we help support.
Yeah, that's exciting that you guys are working on stuff like that. It's really cool. How would you say your work relates to kind of the various Meta products, such as like the social media aspects, virtual reality, or the metaverse?
So being on infrastructure, I never actually interact with the user or with the products, but what I do is that I help maintain everything that helps the product run. So from hardware to internal tools that the company has. So we never actually interact with the user, but we do everything else in the back end.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in terms of like when you're at work and stuff, who do you interact with most? So you said you don't really interact with the users or the customers, but do you interact with other internal functions or outside entities, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that our team is structured, it's called infrastructure data science. And we act as this little group within the company of data scientists. And what we do is that if anyone in the company has some sort of infrastructure related problem, so it can be someone who maintains an app, or it could be one of our sourcing people who interact with vendors, because Meta manufactures its own hardware. So it can range from any of that, from software engineers to hardware engineers to product managers. And then you go in as the data scientist on the team, you understand their problem and you work on it from start to finish, and you kind of interact with them. And then in addition to that, I have all these different kinds of partners across the company. And in addition to that, I have my own little team of data scientists. We usually don't work together on the same project, but they're there for mentorship and we just hang out.
That's awesome. How would you say that this role has changed over time and like while you've been at Meta?
Yeah, this role has actually been rapidly evolving. I just joined last year, so I have fairly limited experience, but from what I hear, it was a much smaller group, and now it's really growing in the capabilities that it offers. So initially, it started out as just some very kind of limited kind of analysis, but now we basically have the capability to partner with anyone in the company. So we just expanded our skill sets a lot. So we have a lot of different people on the team, from PhDs to people who just graduated from undergrad, and then across fields, from psychology to computer science. So yeah, just the team has gotten a lot more diverse in terms of skills, and then also in terms of the kind of people who are on the team.
Yeah, it's cool that you're working with like people with a lot of different academic backgrounds. That seems fun.
Yeah, very Middlebury also.
Yes, exactly. What would you say you think are the biggest challenges or opportunities shaping data analytics going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of challenges, it would be potentially understanding different data sets. So I think in today's industry, unless you join a space where the data is not quite available, you just have most of the data sets kind of set up, and you just need to understand how to manipulate the data. There's usually a little bit less of the feature cleaning and that part. And in terms of opportunities, I think as the size of data sets is growing in most fields, there's a lot of chance to bring in machine learning methods and more data intensive techniques, which can be really powerful. And then the challenge associated with that is properly understanding how they work, because they're just a black box. So sometimes, you could run the model and the result may not make any sense because of something that's weird in the data set, or something some aspect of the model was not right for the use case.
Yeah, that's not exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And then what do you find the most challenging or interesting about your work? You could do challenging first and then interesting second, maybe.
Yeah, I think the challenge for me when I started was I did not realize how much my data science role was about collaborating with different kinds of people and communicating my results. There was actually a huge communication was really important. So as a data scientist, I think, you can know your models really well, you can know your skills really well, but if you want to influence decisions, you have to be able to communicate, and you have to be able to simplify what you're doing so that people actually understand and they can use your work. So that was very challenging. And I think something I didn't even realize was that important. And I think what I find most interesting is the breadth of fields that I get to learn in my day-to-day work. What I love is the independence in the job. So what usually happens is that I get some sort of a problem statement that, okay, we need to solve this. But then it's totally up to me how I want to solve it. So my solution could be anything from numerical optimization to some applied math or just a regular stats model. So it's really up to me how I think the problem should be solved. And because of that, I really get to learn a lot of new things every day.
I love to hear that you communicate and work with other people a lot, because I feel like sometimes it can be scary going into tech and data and computer science and thinking you might just be sitting at your computer all day alone. But it's good to hear that that's not actually the case.
Yeah, I think especially for data science, you really need, I think most data science jobs will have this aspect.
Yeah. I'm curious about your own experience from campus to career. So at Mid, you majored in math and economics. Tell us the rest of your story.
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually at Mid, I started to realize that I wanted to go a bit deeper in terms of my math stats knowledge, because I figured out a little late that data science and statistics is what I want to do. And I also started to get a sense that I want to be more involved in research. So but I also needed some time to figure that out. So I joined analysis group right after college, and I worked as a healthcare analyst, and that involved working with pharmaceutical companies, helping them run trials and quantify their results and things like that. But then I knew that I wanted to study a little bit more so that I can unlock some opportunities in the machine learning space and also get more involved in research and maybe explore the possibility of doing a PhD. So I applied for stats masters, and then I ended up going to Stanford after a year at analysis group. And at Stanford, I did statistics, and the program was pretty flexible. I did a lot of this, a lot of pure statistics, more theoretical stuff, but at the same time, I also got the chance to do a lot of applied classes like machine learning, where I did a lot of my projects, got involved in research. And while doing this program, I realized that I would actually be happiest in an industry role that still lets me or pushes me to be involved in academia, in research. So then I found like a small subset of jobs in tech that were like this. And I interned at Meta in this role. I really loved it. And so I went back.
That's awesome. How would you say your Middlebury experience prepared you for this career role? And kind of going off of that, are there any specific courses or activities or things that you did at Middlebury that you really found valuable?
So I think the biggest thing, and I still think about this, is communication skills. I think that is something I just learned from Middlebury, and I use it throughout my life. So from writing well to speaking well, I think, and communicating clearly with different types of people, I think that's one of the most important things I took away from Mid. In terms of classes, I would say, yeah, like all the like the what are they called, the requirement classes. Those that I did, they were actually really helpful for this, because most of my other classes were in math or CS or econ. And then if you're thinking from a data science perspective, I think the most important classes that I took at Mid were the little bit more advanced econometrics. I think it's 200 level or something. That really helped me think about different kinds of problems. And there was a stats class as well, a little bit more theory. And then there was a data science class, which had some hands-on projects. And I would also highly recommend taking some CS classes, which are more applied.
What do you view as having been most important in getting your first job?
My first job, okay, so I think for analysis group, a lot of the econ classes that I had taken and some basic stats knowledge was really useful. And then for Meta, I think it was a lot of the projects that I did. So just, yeah, they were more research oriented, but then I think it's also useful to have just any type of projects that you do yourself independently. And also, I worked on my coding skills, which was a little bit important for this job, and also more depth in statistics.
Yeah, that makes sense. And would you say that kind of if a Middlebury student is interested in going into data science, is it typical for kind of people in your area to have gone and gotten a graduate degree, or is that more specific to what you were interested in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I can tell you about what I think is the current state of things, and this might change. But currently, usually what happens is that if you want to do these kind of more independent roles in bigger companies where roles are well defined, then usually you need a master's or a PhD. Where if you want to be the person kind of guiding the project, and if you want to span a lot of different fields, and the reason for this is that it takes a while to get that kind of depth and that kind of experience in where you can actually do a project from start to finish using the the best possible technique or exploring some different options. But I think directly out of undergrad, usually the type of roles that are available are those which involve some experimentation like A/B testing, or doing some sort of more analytics roles like data cleaning, reporting, doing some statistics, but a little bit more well defined. That okay, we wanted the kind of work I did at analysis group where we know the problem, we know the solution, and we have to implement it. It still involves a lot of learning and interesting work, but usually you are not the one kind of shaping the project.
So what would you say is next for you professionally? Are you planning on staying at Meta for a while, or thinking of trying something new?
Yeah, I think I am really happy where I am right now, especially because I started out doing statistics and machine learning, and currently I do mostly applied math and then a little bit of machine learning on the side. So it's really fun to learn something new, and I think this job gives me the chance to try out different fields. So I think I would stay here for the foreseeable future.
Given your experiences and what you know now, what advice can you give to current students on how best to prepare themselves for entry points into this career field?
Yeah, I think one thing that I wish I had known is that if you're interested in data science, there are a lot of different roles that you could be involved in. And it involves a lot of different skill sets. So just as a basic difference, there is product data scientist, and then there is my type of role, research data scientist or applied scientist. So product data scientist will essentially work with the product managers and software engineers who maintain the app, and answer questions about, oh, should we implement this feature or should we do it this way? And that usually involves running some experiments on users, making decisions, interpreting that, and then leading to changes to the app or the product. And then my role is more just, yeah, just kind of more in the stats depth field. So just as an example, these two roles are so different from each other. So I think one thing I would suggest, if it's possible, is to talk to a lot of different data scientists, people who have different role names across the industry, to understand that what do they do, what kind of skills does it need, and based on your interests, pursue one of these tracks, and then pursuing that. And this is if you're closer to the job search phase. So I'm talking in terms of developing the skills that you'd need to start interviewing and things like that. So if you want to do product data science, you don't need to spend your time doing coding questions. But if you want to do more of the more technical, I guess I would say, roles, then you need to work on your coding skills. Mine is kind of a medium on the coding spectrum. So if you want to do something different, then you probably need to train like a software engineer to do those problems. So yeah, I think if you can get a rough sense of which person's day to day I like more, then you can start planning for that accordingly. Because yeah, data science itself is pretty wide, so it can get really confusing and overwhelming to
Yeah.
plan for that.
Yeah, that sounds like really good advice. What types of experiences, maybe a little bit less academic, like less coursework focused, would you say lend themselves to an entry-level point in this career field?
Yeah, I think anything that shows good teamwork skills, leadership skills, I think that's always a plus. And Mid offers so many great opportunities to get involved. I think, yeah, I think people skills are very useful, not just for getting the job, but for having a good experience. So yeah, anything that's involves working in a team or leading a team is
Yeah, that sounds
very
good.
useful.
And then what are some of kind of the key elements of the interview process for maybe an entry-level data scientist job?
Yeah, okay. So I think for most jobs, you will have these elements. So one is some stats knowledge, which will involve some sort of hypothesis testing, a general knowledge of some models like regression, decision trees. I think that's kind of the base. And then some data manipulation knowledge, like this could be just SQL, some 2 or 3 functions. It's not too bad to learn those. And so yeah, just some basic things like how would you calculate a sum of something grouped by one variable, essentially. So that kind of stuff. And then in addition to that, there is a little bit of coding knowledge required. This can range from 0 to 100, so depending on what kind of role you want. But I would suggest that for the average role, if you want to be really well prepared, maybe in the medium to hard space, some basic data structure knowledge, knowing time complexity, space complexity, things like that. No need to get too complicated with the data structures. I think I haven't really ever been asked a question about trees, for instance, because we didn't need to go there. But there are some jobs that might need that. And I think that's all. Oh yeah, and also doing any sort of a project, a hands-on project, because sometimes or most often there is a case study element in these interviews where they will give you a problem and then they'll ask you how would you solve it, or they might give you a take-home exam or something like that where they ask you to solve the problem using data science. So I think the things that helped me prepare for that were datathons, hackathons kind of things. If you don't have the opportunities to do that, I would suggest maybe doing a Kaggle contest just to learn from it. I think that's something that actually turned out to be pretty important.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. And is there any kind of advice you might have on how best to find these opportunities, kind of to enter the data science field?
Yeah, I think for me, that thing that worked really well was to use LinkedIn and just go for it with all my connections. If I saw someone at a tech company, because I knew I was interested in tech, I would just reach out and say that, hey, whatever connection that we might have, just kind of use that. And like for instance, when I was joining Stanford, I just looked at who were some of the people in my program that year, the year above me, and I just reached out to them, and they were actually very helpful. So it's always worth reaching out to people that you may not know, with kind of a clear sense of what you would like to get out of that conversation. I think in tech, it's really referral driven, getting the interview opportunity. So what I mean by that is that I can go and submit a referral for someone, which is very low cost for me. I just have to kind of upload your CV and give a sense of why this person is a good fit for the role. But that almost guarantees that your application will get looked at. So I would suggest that it's a good way to approach the process.
Yeah, thank you. That was super helpful information. I think sometimes it's a little hard as like students to really feel comfortable reaching out to people, but it definitely
Yeah, I
seems like
can
it pays
understand
off. So
that.
yeah. Trisha, thank you once again for your engagement with us in helping students to prepare for their first career destinations. This
Thank you.
concludes this episode within the series Exploring Careers in Data Analytics. In closing, I want to encourage viewers to tune in to get career perspectives and advice from a number of professionals in a broad variety of organizations in our other episodes in this series. I also want to encourage you to tune in to other MIDDVantage series, which can be accessed through the Events and Programs tab on the CCI website. Thank you again for watching.